Right. So we are starting on chapter 5, time value of money. And you are probably in financial management right now, along with intermediate accounting. So there is a lot of overlap, and I go into a lot of in-depth videos for financial management. And I'm going to use a few of those for intermediate as well, because there is a lot of overlap here in these concepts. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just about the fact that, a dollar today is not equal to a dollar a year from now. Okay. The time value of money. And you know how if you go buy a house and you see they total up all your house payments and total up, and it's a ridiculous amount of money. And that's what makes people think no debt, no debt, no debt. That is like comparing oranges to apples when you add all those payments, because you're adding a payment from today up with a payment from 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and 30 years from now. None of that. That's just a worthless number, really. Okay. Just not a good number. You're not comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Okay. So we want to get money in the same time period so we can make good decisions. Okay. So here is just a simple interest problem here. They put $100 in the bank. They earn 6%. The future value is 106. Okay. This is very simple interest right here. It doesn't take just a lot of calculation to do simple interest. Therefore, we don't do it that often. Okay. We actually do more compounding interest. Okay. So what happens is then this is interest on top of interest. And so your interest is making more. So your annual rate may be 6%, but your yield might be more than 6%. Okay. So here is a simple interest problem. We have principal, they say investment. A lot of times we just say principal. Rates are always quoted at an annual amount. Always an annual amount. Okay. So what that means is 10% over a year. Okay. If we keep that money in that investment for 1 year, we'll earn $100. Okay. And then we will have $1,100. Okay. Now let's talk about compounding interest. Okay, so suppose we invested in $1,000 in an investment paying 10% compounded annually. How much interest will you earn in each of the next 3 years? And what will be the investment balance after 3 years? Okay, we just did year one, so we don't really have to do year one. We've already done that. Okay, then that 1100 comes down here in year two, and we're going to earn 10% on top of that. So you can see we're earning more than 10% now because we've got interest not just on our 1,000, but on the 100 that we accumulated from the previous period. Okay, that will total up to be 1,210. Well, then we're going to take that and then we're going to earn interest on that amount. Okay, so we end up earning $1,331. Well, $331 of that. Okay. All right. So, annual rates at which money actually grows during a year is called the effective rate. Sometimes we call it the market rate. So don't get too confused. We are going to do bonds. When we do bonds, we're going to talk about the market rate, but we're also going to talk about the stated rate. The stated rate is what is printed on the bond. Okay. So here we have an example of 12%, and they use that because it's wonderful in the fact that 12% divides evenly out over 12 months. Okay. So if they compounded one time a year, they're only going to be earning 12%. If they compounded this semi-annually, then they would actually earn 12.36 interest. Okay. If they compounded it 4 times, then look how that number goes up. Okay. It goes up because we're earning interest on top of interest. And you can go all the way as far as to compounding once a month, and then your interest rate would be 12.68. When you're in business calculus, you might have learned how to do perpetual or continuous compounding, and that's like every second of every day compounding. So it won't make the interest rate go up much more than this though. Okay, so here we have another example. We're going to assume $1,000 at our 10%, and we're going to compound it semi-annually, twice a year. Okay, so we have the $1,000. We're going to multiply that not times 10%, but multiply times 5% because the 10 is for 1 year. Okay, for 1 year. So we'll cut that in half. They did that right there. Cut that in half to get 5%. So they're going to earn $50. That's going to get added to the balance, 1,050. Okay. Then the next half of the year, 5% on 1,050 means you're going to earn $52.50. Okay. Notice how we only, and that other problem, when we only compounded once, we ended up with only 1,100. That was it. But since we compounded it, we earned a little bit more. So you can take what you earned, the 102.50, divide it by 1,000, and you had an effective rate of 10.25. Okay. I'm not going to do those problems. Sometimes they take us a long time to get through them, and there's a lot of slides that we need to get through. Okay. So now we are going to be talking about the future value of a single dollar. Here's the formula for that. I'm not necessarily going to teach y'all through the formulas. I am going to show you how to do it in your TI-84 calculator, and we're going to talk about how to do it with the present value tables or the time value of money tables. All right. So and I love that they give us part of these tables right here. I will pull an example of one up here in just a minute. All right, so now we have an example, a future value of a single amount. We want to know how much will the future value be, okay? So we're going to assume that we are going to invest $1,000 for 3 years. These are things you need. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of put a little blurb of information over here. We have N, and I'm going to call it N because that's what it's going to be in your calculator and right there. Okay. So we have 3 periods. That's our N. Our interest rate is 10%. And our present value right now is $1,000. We want to know how much will we have in 3 years. And you can kind of draw yourself a little timeline here. Here's your present value. We have 1, 2, 3 years. Here, this is the end. We want to know what is the future value of 1. And we're going to use that table, future value of 1. Okay. So, how you use these tables, we find the 10%, we find the number of periods, and we find the factor that intersects those two numbers. And we will take that $1,000 and we will just multiply it times that factor 1.33100. Okay. And we will end up with 1,301. Now, didn't we do that? Did that same one, right? Look right there. We went through the calculation of doing it every single time, but these tables can help us not do all that work. Okay. And this is how they will probably test you on the CPA exam. They'll want you to use these tables. They'll give you a small little blurb of the table. Let me see if I can grab our tables really quick. I have them here somewhere. Let's see. Maybe I had them in financial management. All right, so just pause the video really quick so I could go find these tables. Okay, so here is these tables. They're huge and a little bit overwhelming sometimes, but I'm just going to come back up here. That first table, you can find that 10% and 3 periods. I'm on the wrong table. That happens sometimes. I need the future value of $1. Okay. If I hadn't done that before, I would have went with that, but I knew it wasn't right. So you can see that is just a little clip that they gave you in the problem of the present value. So knowing which table to use is very, very important. So you just have to figure out, am I trying to find the present value or the future value? And this problem, they were wanting us to find the future value. Okay. All right. So now we're going to look at the present value of a single sum. Okay, we're just doing single dollar amounts. $1 amount going in or out at the beginning, and $1 amount coming out at the end. Okay, so we would use a different table for that. So that's future value of one. Our present value of one is right there. Okay, all right. So now we know in that previous problem $1,000, but we could go backwards too. Okay, we don't have to go all the way to future value. We can take a future value amount and pull it back to present value. Okay, here is the formula. If you like the formula, I'm okay with that. I don't care for the formula. It's very math intensive, and you do not have time to do that on the CPA exam. Okay, so we could actually do this future value. We could grab this future value and then make it go back to present value, which I believe is what they make you do. So you look at the table. Again, you're using 10% interest, 3 periods. You find where those two intersect. Take the $1,000, multiply it times the 0.75131, and that will give you $1,000. So it's a nice check figure too. You can always do that. Okay. So what these factors are is taking $1, putting $1 in for the future value. Okay. So it'd be like saying there's one there. Okay. The present value of $1 3 years from now, going back to the present value, 3 years at 10% interest, that's how much that $1 is. Okay, so basically it's 75 cents. Okay, we want to keep our decimal places in there to keep rounding error, especially if you get a really big number like $1 million, multiply that, you're going to have some rounding error because the tables only go out so far. Okay, so real quick, I want to jump over here to the TI-84 calculator, and I just did this one on my screen because it's kind of hard for you to see my uh, where I'm at, and I'd like to start over right here. Let's go, let's see if it'll go back. Well, let's try this. Start. All right, so here we have our TI-84 calculator. And if you go to apps, you'll see finance. I don't want to download it, but I do want this to go away. There we go. So we'll hit enter, we'll go to finance, and then time value of money solver is right there. Okay. Your N is your number of periods. Be sure to click the calculator. Don't hit your keyboard or anything when you're using it online like this. Because it won't register a negative unless you put the negative that's on the calculator. Okay. We had 10% interest and we had a present value of 1,000. We're going to ignore the payment right now. We want to know what the future value is. We're going to select, we're right there on that future value. We will hit alpha, enter, and there you have 1331. That is exactly what we calculated in the previous problem. Okay, we can go back. I always recommend the old calculators, we would have to zero everything out. Don't really have to do that as much, but make sure if you had a number somewhere else that you want to zero that out. Okay, we're not dealing with payment. I want you to also notice that 1331 came out to be a negative number, that's because we're either putting money in or taking money out. So we put money in, take it out. So one of those got to be a negative. You don't have to put the negative on there. I know what you're doing. When I ask for present value, you don't have to give me a negative. Okay. So present value, we want to calculate that. So we can hit alpha enter, and there we have $1,000. So you can use your TI-84 calculator from college algebra. I told all the financial management students to make sure they keep theirs and they have it at the beginning of the semester because we would use it. And this is nice. This would be nice to be able to use this and not the tables on the CPA exam, though. They're not going to let you use a TI-84 calculator on the CPA exam. They are going to give you these, they're going to give you a couple of little blurbs like this, and they'll say this comes from this table. They'll give you a couple of tables, and you got to know which one to pull from. Okay. All right. So we have kind of talked about a lot of this. All right. So determining an unknown interest rate, okay, we can solve for the interest rate. Now, they're going to go through the formula, not the formula, they're going to do it with the table, but this is so much easily done on the TI-84 because it's pretty easy to solve for anything, okay? So they tell us, suppose a friend asked to borrow $500 today. My present value today is $500. And they promise to pay you 605. That is your future value. Okay. Your period is 2 years. 2 years. And they want us to find the annual interest rate. Okay. We'll go down here and we will work through this. We actually could do this two ways. We could use the present value tables or the future value tables. Okay. We can take the 500 and divide it by 605 to get this factor right here. And then we'd look at the 2 year, and then we would just basically go across and we'd find what interest rate matches that. And so that was at a 10%. Let's go do that on the calculator. Okay, so 500 and 600. Okay, let's go up. It was 2 years. We don't know the interest. We're going to calculate that. They told us 500 today. We're not doing payment. We won't do that just yet. The future value was what, 605? We can go back up here to this interest, do alpha, enter, and oh, I know what I did wrong. I did not put a negative in one of those. So I put negative in the 500 because she's literally give $500 is leaving. Okay. That $500 leaving today will be worth 605 coming back to us. Okay. So now let's hit alpha enter and we get 10%. When you enter this in the calculator, you don't have to put it in as a decimal point. If you use Excel, then you have to use it as a decimal point. Okay, so we got that number a lot faster with our calculator. Okay, so we can also determine, what are we looking for? They tell us that you want to invest $10,000 today. That is my present value, 10K. My future value is 16,000 for graduate school. If you invest at an interest rate of 10% compounded annually, how many years will it take to accumulate the required amount? Okay, again, we can go through this and we can take the 10,000 divided by 16,000 and we find this factor, and we know our interest rate's 10%. So we will look at the 10% and then we find that, and we know that it has to be 5 years that we would have to invest that. Okay. Let's go over here one more time. And let's go up here. We're going to be looking for the number of periods. So zero that one out. They did tell us 10%, I believe, that we were told 10. Yep, we were told 10%. I just want to make sure. And the present value is 10,000. Oops, let me go back. negative 10,000. And he wants to get what, how much? See, I can't remember. 16,000. Okay. And we'll put that in. We'll go back up to the N, hit alpha, enter, and boom. We got 4 point. Actually have a more precise number than the tables gave us. The table just told us around about 5 years. We know it doesn't quite have to be 5 years, just a little bit less. 4 years, 0.9313, all those decimal places. That is the more correct answer when you are doing this. Okay. All right. So just kind of showing you how to do it this way. In financial management, we went through a lot of Excel. You can do a lot of these calculations in Excel. You won't have access to Excel while you're doing your test or well, you might have a little bit of on the CPA exam, but the CPA exam, even it'll give you a spreadsheet, it's not going to give you any formulas. You're going to have to write those formulas. Okay. So some of the things that we could use these four would be valuing assets, looking at different cash flows for different investments, and what would the present value be? Because we might have a required return. We might want to make sure that we are earning 10%, 12%. So we have to look and we have to make sure that we are investing our money into something that is going to be worth it. Okay. All right. So let's come down here, valuing a note, one payment, explicit interest. Okay. So here we have a shoe company, manufactures athletic shoes for sale to retailers. The company recently sold a large order of shoes for sporting goods for $50,000. The shoe company agreed to accept a note payment for the shoes, require payment of 50,000 in 1 year plus 10% interest. So we have to calculate that. Okay. Oh, so all right. So future value of would be 55,000. They take the 10% multiplied times 50,000 to get that future value. And they want to know what's the present value. Well, it's going to be 50,000 because we kind of knew that's what it was today. We started there. So this was kind of a very simplified one. We could have taken the factor. I think we could all see that we knew the present value was 50,000 since we used 50,000 today, multiplied that times 10% to give us $5,000 and then added the 50K back to it, okay? But you may not have known the present value. Sometimes these investments are like zero interest bearing, but even though it says zero interest, we still have to record interest because there is an interest element to every kind of cash flows. Okay. All right, so now the shoe company recently sold a large order of shoes to Sporting Goods. The terms of the sale require Sporting Goods to sign a non-interest bearing note of 60,500 with payment due in 2 years now. Okay, so we are looking for the present value. The future value is going to be 60,500. I think this is one of those just almost identical to the other one. What's the present value of getting $60,500 in 2 years? 2 years is your in. Interest rate is 10. I bet it's going to be 50,000. What do you bet? Yep. Yes. So our factor for 10%, 2 years is 0.82645, which gives us a present value of $50,000. Okay. This is it for this section. We will pick up on annuities in the next video.